minimal, very minimal amount, if any, at early age. Later on, yes, there was sports at school, mainly gymnastics, parallel bars, high bar, horse, these kind of things. Required quite a bit of courage. And then also ropes, vertical ropes that thick to climb up. It was good training. That's what I remember out from those days. So it was always the minimum basics that got meted out.
Also in your book, you talk about the early political observations. Can you give me like examples on what you saw during some of the campaigns?
In the campaign?
Yeah.
Well, before the 33, I was really too young to have any interest in it. Absolutely nothing. It was things that I saw on the sideline. They were on, usually in corner pubs, they had voting facilities, and they had propaganda, placards, these kind of things, positioned outside, and it usually was quiet, as far as I remember. I didn't really attend many elections before 33, and after 33, after the takeover, there really was no more election.
It's all Hitler.
Yes. It was all directed from the party and the government. But in the years between 30 and 33, there were fairly wild confrontations between the parties, mostly the communists and the Nazi party. For the SPD branch, they had a protection, a little army like the Nazis had also. They were marching around in columns like the military, sang their songs and slogans and all that. And they got involved in street fights. Not that I saw it in my neighborhood, there wasn't anything like it. It was more in the center of Berlin, which I didn't live in. I only know that before 33, we had somebody living in our apartment house, and he was active in the SPD branch, the protective branch, so something like the SPD, the Social Democratic Party. He was active in their little army. And one day I was standing in my bedroom, and the door was underneath my bedroom to the apartment house, and I heard some feet running in the hallway, and I heard a shot. The guy was shot by some Nazi guys. And when I didn't see him as he was shot, I didn't run down to look at it. So they were really wild confrontations. Not so much in my suburb. It was a working suburb. Most everybody was social democratic or communist or Nazis. What else is there? So then the different parties had their musical bands. They were marching around in the streets during election time, blasting their songs. Communists had a very specific instrumentation band. It was not what you see nowadays, kind of instruments they display today and use today. Trumpets, French horn, and what is that called?
Trombone.
Trombones, and then the big ones, you know. They had what was called Schalmeien. Don't exist anywhere else. But I've seen them when I was in Germany a few years back. I saw the instruments in Munich. They had a band with those. And it was simply an instrument that you could blow into.
Flute.
But no reed. And it had a really funny sound. It had different sizes of those. And somebody must have gotten a hold of those instruments, and they landed in Munich. So the communists had a band made out of some special instruments that nobody else had. It is an adoption of very ancient instruments that was used in the Middle East, I think. That's where it came from. So these bands were running around, marching, singing songs, trying to excite the population. Population wasn't very excitable. They were worried about their situation. There was a lot of unemployment, 20% or 25% or something like that, which was a catastrophe at the time. Similar to today, but much worse, much worse. And well, we were lucky because my father had fairly stable employment with a traffic company, which was a public corporation. And but the income was fairly very low. But there was included pension and health care, which is worth a lot. People start to realize nowadays. So we had basic health supplies. Even teeth were treated. If you had pain somewhere, you could go to a dentist and got repaired. That's it. But no checkups. Well, entertainment was later on, when I got 10, 11, 12, usually spent it in the woods, getting mushrooms, or what else did we do in the woods? Or we got together cheap wood, we got a license to dig out roots of trees which were left over. It's very, very difficult, very heavy work, very heavy work. And also cutting it apart later on, very heavy work. But you got it for nothing. It helped to raise your living standards a little bit. And my father had a little cart that he had made by some friend. It was about from the wall to here, about here long. And two people could pull it. The arrangement for two people to pull it. But that thing we got in the woods and made, they dug out roots. And that helped a lot. Also was very good exercise, which everybody hated.
What do you think was one of the most challenging things about living in the 1930s and that time period?
Well, you really didn't think that way, to look for challenges.
No, I mean, like, what was like the hardest thing about living? Like, what did you think was?
The hardest thing was for me was to find out what I want to do with my life. I really didn't sit down and rationalize and write down what I thought. But I had to come up with some kind of solution to the problem. What do you want to do? And my father, when I was 14 years of age, their education for the common German boy stopped at age 14. Age 14, you looked for an apprenticeship, some kind of a trade, which lasted between 3 and 4 years. You made a contract with the master. And so my father had in mind to get me into the workforce as soon as possible, so that make a few pennies to the meager income that he had. That was his interest. And he got me into a little outfit, a few drums sitting around. They are distributors of chemicals, oils, or something like that. And I was supposed to start as an apprentice there. Yeah. I told my dad later on, he went home, something like, "Man, no, you're crazy. I'm not going to learn anything. Nothing. I'm a gopher. And I don't want to do that, period." My grades were always tops, and it would be a waste of my life. I realized that much. So I got really excited when my father thought I could do this kind of a thing. Now, my father was fairly uneducated. He was worried about his finances, about as far as he could look. He was worried about the politics also. He was always, he was not a member of the Social Democratic Party, but he was a sympathizer his whole life long. He never sympathized with the Communist Party, as far as I know. And he spent his few free hours usually playing cards with buddies. I could sit on his lap and look at it, and a room full of smoke and a beer